She was beaten again. Her husband struck her until her body shook. Until her breath came out in shallow, shallow gas. Then came the cutting. Then came the shaving. And when he grew tired of watching her bleed and tremble, he dragged her outside and tied her to a wooden post. There she was left under the burning western sun, her skin scorching, her lips cracking, her body shaking from heat and pain. This was not the life she had dreamed of. She had been forced into this marriage. Now her family, drowning in debt, traded her youth and beauty for livestock and coin. They told her it was for survival, that she should be grateful to have a wealthy husband. But wealth meant nothing, because behind his charming smile and behind his polite nods at church, the man she had been given to was nothing more than a beast. He was older, stronger, and crueler than she could have ever imagined. He drank until his mind clouded. He cursed until his spit flew across the room. And when his fury reached its peak, he found new ways to punish her. Beating her was not enough. Yelling was not enough. And he needed to remind her that she belonged to him and that her body and her soul were his property. So he devised his own rituals. Sometimes he cut her. Sometimes he shaved her. Always he left her broken, tied outside like an animal, forced to endure the heat of the day with no water, no shade, no mercy. The townspeople never knew. To them, he was a respected man, a wealthy landowner, a man who could be trusted. They saw him smile, lend a horse, pay off a neighbor's debt. They never looked behind the closed doors of his home. But she knew the truth. She knew what he was when the sun went down and the world grew quiet. She had tried to run once. She made it to the barn before his hand tangled in her hair and dragged her to the dirt. That night he punished her so brutally she thought she would not live to see the morning. And still it was not enough for him. Every time she cried, it fueled his sickness. Every time she begged, it made him laugh. He thrived on her pain. And she had no escape. Day after day, she was reminded of the same truth. There was no father to protect her, no brother to shield her. Her mother was long gone. And the very family who should have defended her had betrayed her instead, selling her into the hands of a monster. So she endured. Her body bore the bruises. Her skin carried the cuts. Her spirit sank deeper with every passing day. One afternoon, as he tied her outside once more, she whispered words that chilled even her own heart. Her voice was weak, cracked from thirst, but she forced them out. Just keep shaving. I can't fight anymore. It was not rebellion. It was resignation. The last ember of her will seemed ready to die. And yet in her eyes, there was something more. A faint spark. A silent plea. She was waiting. Waiting for someone, anyone, to see what she was forced to endure. Waiting for someone to believe her cries, to step forward, to give her a chance to live. But who would dare? Who would stand against a man so respected, so feared, so cruel? Well, and if someone did, could they truly survive the storm of violence that was sure to follow? The rancher was not supposed to be there that day. He was just passing through, riding home after trading feed in town. The sun was hot, the trail was long, and he thought only of cold water waiting back at his cabin. Then he saw something that made him pull hard on the reins. At first, it looked like a bundle of rags tied to a post in the field. But as he drew closer, the shape moved. A head lifted, a face turned toward him. It was a woman. Her skin burned red under the sun. Her dress was torn, her wrists cut raw from rope. She was barely conscious, swaying as the heat scorched her body. The rancher swung off his horse, pulled the knife from his belt and cut her loose. Cut her. She collapsed against him, light and fragile, as if she had no strength left to stand. Easy now, he muttered, lowering her gently to the ground. He slipped off his hat and shaded her face. Her body was covered in marks, bruises, dark and ugly, thin cuts across her arms, the kind of wounds no accident could explain. His stomach twisted. She opened her eyes just enough to see him. Her lips trembled. They made me marry him, she whispered. The rancher leaned closer, trying to catch her words. My family owed money. They gave me away. And now he beats me. He mocks me. He humiliates me. He is a pervert. He cuts into my flesh. He shaves over the wounds. And then he ties me outside to burn under the sun. Her voice cracked, fading with every word. The rancher clenched his jaw. His hand tightened around the knife until his knuckles turned white. He had seen hard men before, men who drank too much and raised a hand in anger. But this was something different. This was cruelty for the sake of cruelty. Stay with me, he said, brushing the hair from her damp face. You're safe now. I'll get you out of here. A single tear rolled down her cheek, not from pain, but from the shock of kindness after so much torment. For a moment, the rancher just held her, his heart pounding. He knew this would not end simply. Men like that never let go of what they claimed. The land was too quiet and the air too heavy. His instinct screamed at him that danger was near. And then he heard it, the sound of boots on dry earth. He turned his head slowly, and there, standing in the sun with a knife in hand, was the man himself. The rancher froze for only a second when the husband appeared. The man's eyes were wild, his shirt open, his chest heaving with every angry breath. His hand gripped a knife, the blade catching the sunlight like fire. What do you think you're doing with my wife? He shouted, voice thick with whiskey. The rancher steadied his stance. Your wife is half dead. She needs help. The man spat in the dirt. She belongs to me, and any man who lays a hand on her dies. Then he charged. The rancher barely had time to move. The blade swiped across his sleeve, slicing fabric, but missing flesh. His heart hammered, but his focus sharpened. He caught the man's arm. The two of them twisting, muscles straining, teeth clenched. The woman whimpered weakly in the dust, her voice too faint to carry. The husband swung again, but his aim was sloppy, fueled by rage and liquor. The rancher blocked, then shoved hard. Send in the man stumbling back. Dust rose as boots scraped the ground. They circled each other like two animals ready to tear flesh. The husband roared, lunged low, and the rancher caught his wrist, twisted, and drove his elbow into the man's ribs. A sick crack followed. The knife slipped, falling with a dull thud into the dirt. Now it was fists. The rancher took a hard blow to the side of his jaw, his head snapping to the right, but he shook it off and answered with a punch that sent the man sprawling. The crowd in town might have seen him as respectable, but here on the dirt, he was just another bully. Gasping, beaten by a man who had something worth fighting for. The husband groaned, clutching his mouth, blood dripping from his lip. He spat red into the dust and cursed like a devil. The rancher did not waste time. He turned back to the woman, cut the last strands of rope, still clinging to her wrists, and lifted her into his arms. Her head rested weakly against his chest, her breath shallow, her eyes fluttering half-closed. You're safe now, he whispered. More to convince her than himself. He carried her to his horse, set her carefully on the saddle, and swung up behind her with one sharp kick. The horse leapt forward, hooves pounding hard against the dry earth. Behind them, the husband staggered to his feet, his face twisted with rage. You can't take her, he screamed, voice echoing across the land. She's mine. I'll hunt you down, both of you. The rancher did not look back, but deep inside, he knew those words were not empty. Men like that never stopped. They hunted until the end. The woman stirred, her hand clutching weakly at his arm. Will he follow us? She whispered. The rancher kept his eyes on the trail ahead. He will try, but he won't win. Yet, even as he said it, his gut told him this was just the beginning. So, if you're still listening, if this story has gripped you the way it gripped me, don't let go now. Subscribe and stay with us because the chase is only getting started and what happens next will shake the very ground they ride on. The horse ran hard, dust flying behind them. The rancher held the woman steady, his eyes locked on the trail. He knew the man they left behind would not stay down for long. Sure enough, before they had gone far, the sound of hoof beats echoed across the dry land. 2 riders came fast from behind. The husband had sent his men, the rancher muttered under his breath. Figures he would. He tightened his grip on the reins and braced himself. The first rider pushed closer, yelling, his gun raised. The rancher pulled his pistol and fired once. The shot cracked through the air, striking the man in the shoulder. He spun, nearly falling from his horse, then tumbled into the dust with a scream. The second rider slowed, his eyes wide. He glanced at his wounded partner, then at the rancher's steady aim. Fear took hold, and without a word, he turned his horse and bolted the other way. The rancher lowered his gun, but kept riding hard. The woman leaned against him, weak but awake. "Will they come again?" she whispered. He nodded. "Oh, they will. That man won't stop. Not until someone stops him." By nightfall, they reached the small town. The rancher carried her into the sheriff's office, his boots heavy with dust and his face set in grim resolve. The sheriff looked up from his desk, his brow furrowed. "What's this about?" The rancher laid her gently in a chair. "She's been beaten, tied, left to die. Her husband did this. You need to put him away." The sheriff leaned back, rubbing his chin. He glanced at the woman, then at the rancher. He let out a long sigh and lowered his eyes to the floor as if even he hated the words he was about to say. Finally, he shook his head. "You know as well as I do. Unless he kills her, the law can't do much. Die. He's got money, land, and friends in high places. At most, he pays a fine. That's it." The rancher's jaw tightened. He wanted to slam his fist on the desk to shout that justice was more than money. But the sheriff's words were the truth of the time. The woman's eyes filled with tears. She had dreamed of freedom, of safety, and now she saw that even the law could not protect her. The rancher knelt beside her, his voice low. "Don't lose hope. You're not alone anymore." But in his gut, he knew the fight was not over. Not with a man like that. And sure enough, as they stepped back into the cool night air, a shadow watched from the edge of town. The husband had returned. The night in town was quiet, but inside her heart, the storm still raged. The young woman sat by the lamp in the small cabin where the rancher had taken her. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt a little safe. The air was cool, the bed was soft, and someone finally looked at her, not as property, but as a person. The rancher poured her a cup of water, his rough hands gentle as he set it in front of her. "You'll be all right," he said. "One step at a time," she nodded, though tears filled her eyes. "I don't know if I can ever be free. He will never stop." The rancher leaned back, his face calm but firm. "Then we won't stop either. As long as you're alive, there's a chance, and sometimes that's all a person needs for the first time." She smiled faintly, a small smile, but real. Days turned to weeks. Her body began to heal. Her spirit slowly mended. She walked outside without fear of a rope pulling her back. She laughed softly at the rancher's clumsy jokes when he tried to lighten the mood. Little by little, she started to believe in life again. Between them grew something fragile but strong. Respect first, then trust. And finally something deeper, something that might one day be called love. But even as hope grew, danger lingered. On the edge of town, a figure watched from the shadows that his jaw was tight, his eyes full of fire. The husband had not forgotten. He had not forgiven. He was waiting, and that left a question hanging in the air. When evil refuses to let go, what does it take to finally be free? Is it courage? Is it the law? Or is it the will of ordinary people like you and me to stand up and say enough is enough? This story reminds us that cruelty can hide behind a smile and that sometimes the strongest fight is simply refusing to surrender. So, let me ask you, if you saw someone tied down by fear, by pain, would you walk away or would you stop? Even if it meant risking everything, if this story moved you, if it kept you listening this far, then give it a like. It helps more than you know. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because this tale isn't over. The villain is still out there and the final chapter has yet to be written.